Good morning, everybody, or welcome back to another video. If you are new here, my name is Jules, and you can't see it right now, but I have way too many things on my desk. Today, I want to take you with me on a potentially a shorter video, we'll see, famous last words as always, on a little bit of a journey as I go through to talk to you about a small side project I've been working on recently, when I need a little bit of serotonin, and then maybe we can try another version of this together. So if you're like me and you've been into watercolors for a little bit now, maybe you have a few tubes lying around, and maybe, there's a lot of paint in a watercolor tube. And so if you have like the big tubes, like these 15 milliliter tubes, like this, you might think, wow, this is gonna last me like forever. And you start feeling this sense of freedom. And you think, what if? Because when you start looking into paints and pigments and you start seeing all the different combinations brands have, obviously it's nice to have single pigments. Most of my paints that I own are single pigment. But especially the handmade brands often experiment with mixing pigments together to create really novel shades. And sometimes there's a color that you use all the time and you think, oh man, I wish somebody sold that color, but you just can't find it in a brand. And I reached that point and I thought, you know what? I'm gonna mix my own. The other alternative, of course, is that there is a brand that does sell it, but you don't really feel like spending the money on it and you already own those pigments, so you decide to try and make it yourself. So that's why I have in front of me today a pencil, a watercolor pan, a little swatch piece of cardie paper, and a little sketchbook to keep trying things out in off camera. I have a glass of water, a thing of cocktail sticks, or toothpicks, whatever you want to call them, and a massive box of watercolor tubes. So my plan is today, first of all, let me introduce you to how I got into this. The first thing is I am obsessed with this sort of earth green, sage green color. A lot of people are, I know. Both Faber-Castell and also Derwent have a lovely colored pencil called earth green, and I decided to try and make a paint that matches this earth green, and I did. And it's honestly so much more interesting because, as you can see, you get a lot more variation from watercolor paint, especially when you've mixed pigments. So this was a mixture of nickel titanate yellow, ultramarine blue, and perylene green. I'm sure I could have done it a simpler way, but this way does give a lot of very interesting variation. And it's now in my main palette in a little half pan here. It's not so dark outside today. I just have a little light on in case there's any shadows or anything. It's a lot easier to film that way. But here it is. So watercolor pans do dry down a little bit in the pan. You often have to do a double fill, which is a bit annoying when you're mixing your own. Not really sure how to overcome that. But either way, I don't go through that much of these paints. It's mostly just for fun. But you can see it's beautiful there. And you can also see its brother next to it. So in the past, I would have told you that lime green is absolutely not my colour. But in the recent few months, I've been really craving this springy green. And so I created myself this sort of chartreusey lime colour. And I call it bergamot. And it's a mixture of transparent yellow benzimidazoline yellow PY154 and PB36 cobalt turquoise. So it does look like a lime green, but then you get this wonderful like separation of the yellow in the wash and also the granulation of the cobalt turquoise when you add a little bit more water to it. I've kept a record of all of these things on the back of these sheets and also on the pans. But yes, I call this one bergamot because it looks exactly like this picture of bergamots I found. I'm going to try and put it on the screen if I can. And I think it's just perfect for that. And this one also could be sort of like eucalyptus or something. I've called it summer sage because of this yellow separation you get, which really looks like, I don't know, it's just so beautiful. I really love this color. And finally, this one, a little bit different. I call this one Phoenix. It's a mixture of PY150 nickel azo yellow and PR187, I believe. It's whatever Schminker calls Bordeaux red. It's not exactly perfect necessarily, as I imagined, but it's still this sort of burnt, rusty, flame red colour, and I really, really like this one too. So I've called this one Phoenix because I mean, yeah, I guess I was kind of hoping it would be more yellow in the wash, but maybe the next iteration of this color will be different. And that's also kind of why I like the idea of mixing them in these like little half pans, because it means when you use it all up, you're going to have to mix it again. And then the color you mix will be, I mean, you've kept a record of the pigments. You remember what you did. So it'll probably be similar, but it will be a little bit different every time, I think. So this is a really like meditative activity. So I thought maybe we could just have a quick chat and I'll go through the next color that I want to make with you. And yeah, so grab a cup of coffee or something if you were looking for, you know, a super focused and topical video. This might not be the one for you. But I hope that you will enjoy hanging out with me while I mix my next color. So, what is my next color, you may ask? That is a logical question. So I have been doing a lot of color mixing charts recently. Hang on, let me grab the one I'm talking about. So much stuff on my desk, and yet not the one I needed. And mixing charts like this, where you mix between one color and another one, and then also do 3 shades of lightness. These are so meditative, guys. You should do these. Do these while you're watching TV. The best activity. And one thing that I was really drawn by is this, what I've been calling this Perylene Purple, which is a mixture of Perylene Violet and Indanthrone Blue. And in the middle, you get this sort of velvety, rich purple, which is a little bit muted. And this is one of my, I'm not really a purple person, but I really, really love this shade of purple. So I wanted to make a version of this. And then I thought, wouldn't it be fun to try and add a little bit of spice to a deep, moody color like this? And maybe we could add a little bit of granulation. So I was playing around with the idea. I also have a tube somewhere of this Cobalt Violet Hue by Schmincke. And so if you mix, ignore the rest of these swatches. This is just the realities of what it looks like. This was me mixing from that Rembrandt dot card I had, just testing out different mixes from it. But just look at these purple ones, these two and these two. And you can see the separation of this Cobalt Violet Hue here. I really quite like that. Or just like, I think this one also had some, but just like a little bit less. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to work out in the end, but I think I want to add some. Just for a little bit of something, you know? I think it could be very fun. Otherwise it will just be a very moody, velvety sort of, I'm thinking of calling it Velvet Iris, but we'll have to see what it looks like when it's painted out. It's a bit like naming a kid, you know? You can have a plan, but then sometimes when you see it, you have a different idea immediately. So the colours that I plan to use for this, I'm gonna have to go digging through my paint box, so sorry to editing me. But one of them is definitely going to be this Delft Blue that I used as my Delft Blue PB60 here. Indanthrone Blue by Schmincke, my favourite PB60. Perylene Violet on top of the box because it's my favourite. PV29, my favourite violet pigment. Closely followed by a dioxazine, but I don't seem to use dioxazine very much actually. Yeah, I mean I'm happy to have a tube, but I don't think I even have a big tube. I think I went back and got a big tube of the Perylene Violet because I love it so much. And I got these in that sale like a year ago, you might remember. And then I need to find my Cobalt Violet Hue. Give me a second. Okay, it took me ages to find it because actually it was the only paint from my collection of Schmincke paints that I was actually considering giving away. This is this one doesn't have a pigment number on it. PV62, I think, though. I was actually thinking of giving away this one because I don't use it that much, and I recently got the Roman Schmall Strontium Violet in a pan, and I prefer that one, but this one is in a tube, which means you can mix it. When Roman Schmall comes out with tubes, it might be over for me, to be honest, financially, but we'll see. We'll cross the bridge when we come to it. So it's these pigments that we are going to be using today, and I can just give them a quick swatch for you so you understand what I'm talking about, because I have like a little pan of this Cobalt Violet Hue that I made in anticipation of giving away the tube and then just didn't. And then this is my little art toolkit palette that I never talk about, but has turned out to be one of the ones which I use literally all the time recently. So I'll switch on this left-hand side. This is not a swatching video particularly, though I guess indirectly it will be, because there's a lot of swatching involved in making these mixes. And this is the Delft Blue, the PB60. You can see that wonderful deep inky blue. I'll give you a close-up of these in a second. But I really love this little palette. I honestly think that sometimes small is just what you need, you know? And then this cobalt violet hue can be a little bit harder to re-wet, but I did re-wet it earlier, so hopefully not too bad. So yeah, this colour is a little bit lower tinting and very, very granulating. Let me give it a little bit of clean water to play in. So these are the colours that I plan to mix. And they're quite close to each other in the spectrum, you know? Nothing alchemical happening in this one. And that's what I found with the colours that I want to mix myself. They're really just like very subtle versions of mixes that I just do a lot, or colours that are very specific versions of colours which I like. And it doesn't feel like a commitment to just put a half pound's worth of paint together, you know, from 3 tubes. That's really not that much paint. So yeah, you can see the granulation happening here in this one already. So these 3 colours together look wonderful. And the sort of process that I have to go through for this is to mix some of the paints together in the tube, in the half pan using a toothpick, and then keep swatching it out as you go, and you realise then you can sort of develop the colour that you're mixing. And I think if I want to see any granulation from the cobalt violet hue, I might have to add more than I think. So I think I'm going to add that one in first, just to make sure that there is some in there. I'm also going to double check that this tube doesn't have a binder issue, because that would really... No, it doesn't. That's good. If your tubes have a binder issue, that can really ruin your day with mixing these, because you don't have a lot of space to play with. So you want to... Usually it's not an issue because you can just mix it out, but in this scenario, you really don't want to be messing around with that. So let me know in the comments below while I do this, because I can tell you already we may be here sometime. Tell me in the comments. I hope that wasn't too much, to be honest. Maybe I'll just like scoop out a little bit. If you've ever done this before, like this is, like I say, this is my 4th time doing this, so I don't know. Okay, let's start out with that. Oh, I'm gonna make a total disaster. This is not, you know, this is a real channel. But yeah, what colours you've mixed, maybe? Oh, so this tube is really stuck, closed. I purchased me one of these tube openers, and it works like a charm. You just grip the cap with this one. Oh shit. It's fine. I never said this YouTube channel was suitable for children. I can swear a little bit every now and then. It's because I use this, I use my tube squeezer to push my paint up from the bottom of the tube when I squeeze out a decent amount, because it means that, yeah, because it means that then I don't have so much of a separation issue, I find. And I also recommend a tube squeezer. I just got one for like €7 on Amazon or something. So we can already see, this is an interesting colour. Let's see what this one looks like. So this is just Indian Throne Blue and the Cobalt Violet hue. This pan is filling up already. That's fine. Okay, so you can see how strong that Indian Throne is. Maybe my instincts were right on the Strontium Violet. Well, let's see if there's any of the granulation comes out. If we just give it a little bit of room. You never know. But that just looks like the Indian Throne Blue. Yeah, like I say, there's a chance that the Strontium Violet is not strong enough for this. I'm calling it Strontium Violet. They call it Cobalt Violet hue, but I'm pretty sure it's a pigment that actually contains strontium. And then let's add a little bit of this Perylene Violet and mix that one up in there as well. So like I say, this gets a little tricky, because I've seen some videos of other YouTubers who, a couple of other YouTubers who did this. I know that Paint and Hiding did this, I think. I'll try and tag her channel. I mean, I think she's got way more subscribers than me, but she made her own, but using tube paints, and she like squeezed them up in a bag and then put them into tubes herself, which is an endeavor which, oh Lord, I admire. Let's see where this one's got us. I'm not quite at that level yet, but okay, that's a beautiful sort of that's the sort of purple that I was looking for. I don't think I need to add any more blue or any more like Perylene Violet. Maybe I could add the rest of the Strontium Violet that I had then on that. That's a beautiful inky purple. Oh, that's stunning. That's exactly what I wanted. And the thing is that I like about mixing these colours is you get the value range, right? So you get like that super deep velvety mass tone, and then you get this sort of very, very pale, dusty wash. And I don't know, just give it a couple seconds and see if we see any of the granulation there. Okay, so it's been a little bit, it's not dry yet, but I'm not really seeing that much of that granulation. I put the rest of the paint that I washed off earlier. You can see I was practicing my mixing here. This is my very dirty palette. I put the zinc on here. That was a mistake. It's not coming off. I have this little pile here of the cobalt violet hue. So I'll just mix it in from palette. Seems like my instincts may have been just 100% correct to start with, which isn't that just always the way with dress shopping and paint mixing? You always need more than you think of this colour because it's so... well, it's an effects colour, you know? And I guess a very subtle colour for like florals and stuff, but I don't really paint a lot of specifically florals. You might be asking, Jules, what do you paint? Well, all sorts of stuff really, but I'm not really at the point where I want to share on YouTube. I don't know how to present it particularly. Not that it's like anything crazy, but okay. Anyway, enough of that. Let's test this colour. This is kind of why I like the toothpick method. It allows me to really see the colours in progress. Still got that lovely mass tone. Excellent. I was worried at the beginning that adding the cobalt violet would sort of take away a little bit from the depth of the colour. So I would rather have a very, very subtle granulation and be able to see the depth of the colour, because that's really what I love about it to begin with. Just add a little bit of water maybe in the middle where the pigment is denser. I think that you'll probably get some texture out of that. I think that might be spot on, you know? I'll give it like a few minutes and come back to you again like I did before. This takes a while to dry because it's kind of like a massive puddle of water, as you can see. I don't know if you can see in the top one. Maybe there's some granulation there. Maybe. It's like a very subtle one. And then this colour does look a little more blue than this one. So maybe that's that effect as well. Not that it's a problem. It's kind of like an aubergine purple, like an actual eggplant kind of colour, which I love personally. I could add a little bit more perylene violet if I think it's gone a little too blue. We'll see. We'll see. Like, this is really like, I feel like I'm in the lab again. Except in the lab you don't usually just like add things at whim, but that's because they're expensive and or dangerous, and paints are neither of those things. Anyway, be right back to see how this is drying. Okay, this one's still not quite dry, and I can already tell you though that I do wish it was a little more of the perylene violet in there. So I'm just going to quickly add a tad, really just like a drop. It's so hard to know how much to add. A tiny amount of paint can shift the hue a long way with this kind of thing. It's also kind of hard to mix it thoroughly, especially when you're mixing a lot of pigments which basically look black in the pan. God, I love perylene maroon. But specifically the Schminker one, I don't know, like other colours. Perylene's a little bit of a fickle pigment. Like some of them are duller than others. They have quite a big range of hues. I think that Perylene Crimson, PR149, Perylene and Perylene Violet and Perylene Green are like my three favourite Perylenes. Maybe that's mixed enough. I'm sort of like almost like whipping it a little bit to try and mix the paint sort of up and down in the pan as well as from side to side. Okay, let's dip this. Get a little sample. This Schminker paint is so pigmented, like a little really goes a long way, which is good. Yeah, you see, it's a little more purple. Maybe not. I think I could probably go another dab. So we'll just put that together. Oh, I hope everyone's excited for spring if you're in the Northern Hemisphere with me. I am very excited for spring because it feels like it's been a long winter, to be honest. I spent the last week pretty sick. A lot of people I've known have spent the last week pretty sick, which has really been a bit of a bummer, to be honest. But at least with the sun out, you feel like you can make another start, you know, try again. Okay, maybe this is getting there. So satisfying, by the way, to mix this, like very like gloopy, creamy watercolor paint. I feel like an alchemist. I feel like my ideal occupation in bygone eras would have been like garden hermit or like archives hermit. Do you think it's ever too late to become a librarian? Because like, I feel like I was kind of born to be a librarian, to be honest. But anyway, that's just the everyday struggle of what ifs. This is looking better. A little bit more purple. I think, did I still want it to be a little more purple than that or not really? I don't think I did. I think I'll leave it there. Clean up this toothpick, clean up the pan a little bit maybe, and then we can do like a big swatch and see if we can see any of that granulation on this super textured khadi paper. I always do a swatch on the khadi paper with a lot of pigment and then a lot of water, like a lot of water, and then leave it to dry, because I think that's when you see the most interesting effects. This is the sort of process that we went through, starting with the original colours and ending up with this lovely sort of plum, not really a plum, it's sort of a genuine violet, to be honest, kind of colour. Absolutely adore this and can't wait to see the final swatch. Alright, so I've cleaned up everything except for my hands, and I have some of this beautiful pigment on this paper, so let's see what we can get. And like I say, this is really an adventure, because every time you mix a colour like this, it will look different. And you can see this sort of like almost black at the top, much like a dioxazine violet, but just not quite as bright. And hopefully with a little bit of interest. I will be a little disappointed if I can't see any of that granulation, but also that's not a problem, because I can always either mix another one, or there will always be another opportunity when I've used all of this up. So I'm just going to add like a lot of water. As you can see, this paper really can take it. It's cotton handmade paper. I don't really necessarily like it to paint on very much. It's a bit of a rough texture, though I've seen some people do some beautiful things, of course, as with every medium. But this is the sort of strategy I go for, like really adding a lot of water at the bottom, and then I'm just going to loosen up this pigment at the top because I'm worried it might be a little bit too dense even. Maybe I'll add a little bit more later, but I didn't want there to be like a harsh line. And then we'll add like a few dabs of the pigment down here. And a few dabs of the water up here, just to make sure we can see everything. And I think I'm going to really lighten up this lower corner so we can see the lightest shades. Very nice, right? Maybe we'll just take a tiny dab of the pigment. She says not picking up any. There you go. Just to make sure that we have that real saturation up here at the top. Just make sure. All right then. I'll leave this to dry. Could be some time, to be honest. And I'll come back and I'll try and show you in natural light. And if I can't show you in natural light, I will take a picture and we can talk about that. So here it is. Velvet Iris. It's dried mostly. Like the paper's a bit damp, but the paint is settled down. You don't see that much of the, ignore the purple paint on my fingers, by the way. Occupational hazard. You don't see a lot of the granulation from the cobalt violet hue. Also, this lighting is really not that good. It's a little bit more purple red than it looks on camera right now. Maybe I'll try and do a little color correction on this clip. But like maybe at the edges and around where I put this bloom in the middle to try and see like a little bit of the blue granulation in there, you see it? So maybe on some papers in some projects you would see more of the granulation. But I guess I'll find that out when I use it. But mostly it just has this beautiful deep violet mass tone, and I think it's absolutely perfect. Thank you so much for coming with me on this journey to make this paint today. I hope this maybe inspires you. If you are shopping for art supplies, please consider using the links in my description below. I do get a little commission from Jackson's if you use those. It doesn't cost you anything extra or anything, just a little plug at the end there. And yeah, thanks so much for watching. Please leave a comment letting me know what you think, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye everybody.